Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here.
What are we getting done today?
I am getting Neptune or Poseidon, whichever one you want to call him. So this is from when I was doing the boat race. So I sailed from London to Rio, and when you cross the equator by sail power, you go through like a ceremony where you become one of Neptune's sons. So yeah, when I got off the boat on the other end, landed in Rio. This was added to my list of tattoos to get. Just to kind of, I like my lower legs to be like a record of where I've been and what I've been doing and things that have inspired me and stuff. That's why I've got the likes of the Big Lebowski and Bruce Lee on there as well.
Yeah, class. How long did that trip on the sailboat take?
I was at sea for 28 days.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I did 3 weeks of training, 3 1-week blocks of training down at in Portsmouth off the coast, and then got on the boat. And then we literally sailed. We went down the Thames under Tower Bridge, and they raised Tower Bridge for us, and we did like this ceremonial kind of loop. There were 12 boats, and then we started at the mouth of the sea, on the east coast, and 28 days at sea. Yeah.
What was that like? Not having like your typical sort of like comforts and entertainments and stuff like that.
Weird.
Yeah.
Weird. Yeah. Well, the big challenge for me was, the sleep schedule for a start, because you're on a cycle of 4 hours on, 4 hours off.
Right.
For the whole time, pretty much. There is a slight break in it where you do once a week you're on mother watch, so you do all the cooking and the teas and everything.
Right.
And that's the only time you can get a proper good 10 hours of sleep. All the rest of the time you're in your bunk for 4 hours, then you get up, somebody else jumps in your bunk and rests while you're sailing the boat. Because you're racing. We were racing against 11 other boats, so you have to keep the boat moving all the time. Always someone, tending to the sails and checking the course and everything. And it was just a wild experience. There were moments where like you're out in the middle of the ocean and you're just not moving, and the sea's like glass around you, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm gonna be stuck here for months and months. But then by the time you start rolling again, it's like it was just a wild experience. It was so different to anything ever I'd done before.
Yeah.
I've always been obsessed with the sea and with boats. I've got my pirate ship on the back of my arm here and stuff. But the idea of being at sea and being kind of at the whim of the weather and the elements and, relying on your crew and relying on the boat to keep you alive. When I was somebody died on one of the other boats, about a week into the race.
Whoa.
He got hit on the side of the head with the boom, which is the vertical arm that comes off the sail, and it just killed him outright. And then immediately that kind of hit home that this is a really dangerous environment. And I had a couple of real scary moments where I thought I was going over the side of the boat, and if I wasn't clipped onto the boat, I would have done.
Shit.
And the thing is, because you're moving so quickly, like within 5 minutes, if no one's noticed that you've gone overboard,
you're gone.
You're gone for a while. Like that, they lose people in the sea for up to an hour, and you could be dead by the time they find you.
Yeah, so it was freezing.
Yeah, freezing cold. So it was a very draining experience, because you have to be switched on all the time.
Yeah.
And even when you're asleep, you're not really asleep, because the boat's leaning on its side, and you're getting kicked around by the ocean and stuff. And then there's loads of noise on deck. So it was just a kind of a constant 28 days of work.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to Rio, felt like I'd achieved something.
Oh, definitely. How many people actually get to do that?
Yeah, not many.
But see, when you came off the boat, how like in normal day life, you're always on your phone and stuff like that. You just subconsciously check it. Did that get that out of your system when you came back to shore?
It did a bit.
Just little things like that.
It did a bit. It was odd because like the whole time I was on the boat, I kept thinking to myself, I can't wait till I'm off this. I can't wait till we're done with this. Because you're constantly on edge. You're constantly drained. And I like my own space. I like to be able to go into a room and close the door and be away from everybody.
Yeah.
And you never get that opportunity on the boat. So like that was a big challenge for me, is being a part of a crew for the whole month and. But then by the time we got to Brazil, I actually didn't want to get off the boat. I'd become quite attached to it. Because like the idea of stepping off onto land was like, okay, well, this is the end of this now, you know. And the boat was carrying on because the race was around the world. So I did the first leg of an 8-leg race. I got off in Brazil, and then somebody else got on to do the next leg to go to Cape Town, and that's when you get the really big waves and stuff. But it was a wild experience.
That's next level stuff. See, when you got to shore and you stood off the boat, did it feel weird on your sort of like your body? You know what I mean?
It did. I got off the boat, went to the hotel. I'd booked a hotel just up from the marina. Closed the door, sat down up against the door behind it so no one could get in. I was just like, had a moment to myself just to kind of comprehend what had gone on. Got in bed and fell asleep. And a few hours later, I woke up to go to the toilet, and I fell over walking through the thingy because I was expecting the whole thing to be on the side.
Oh yeah.
You just kind of, your whole equilibrium is off, and like I'm like walking down the hotel like sideways, trying to get to the toilet, like hanging onto the wall. It is odd because you become real accustomed to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know how mad it feels like when you're on a trampoline for like 30 minutes, then you come off and you're like, whoa, like this ground doesn't feel right. So I can only imagine what 28 days would feel like.
Yeah.
Like absolute madness.
And food as well, that's the other problem.
Yeah.
Like after 5 or 6 days, you got no fresh food on the boat.
Oh shit.
So everything is like dehydrated and canned and, you know. Like got off the other end, and I was desperate for an apple and a piece of salmon. That's what I was craving.
Apple, I could live with a salmon.
Apple. It's just because it's like something fresh.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't feel like it's been stored for a year.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. So am I right in saying that you wanted to become an artist? You went to, was it college or university you went to?
Yeah, so I did art at A-level. So my plan initially, I was going to be a graphic designer. I actually wanted to work for Lego because I've always been obsessed with Lego. I have a massive Lego collection. I follow loads
of Lego pages and stuff
really?
on Instagram. It's class.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, Veronica and I are always building Lego stuff. We've just got a couple of new sets arrived.
Oh, brilliant!
Same as Paul Craig, a mutual friend of ours. He's obsessed with Lego as well.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's quite therapeutic, I think, and especially if you're in like a high adrenaline environment like fighting. If you can find something that's just kind of quiet and methodical, it's really relaxing.
Do you know what else with Lego? It's fucking expensive.
It is ridiculous.
What is that all about? Like I went into, was it like basically the equivalent of Toys R Us around here, and I was going down the aisle and I was like, "There's pieces here for £500." I was like, "This isn't for kids." No, I was like, "Is it fuck?"
No, I mean, I think what they've realised is because like when I first got into Lego, it was all for kids.
Yeah.
Like I got my first Lego pirate ship when I was 4. I've still got it now. It's still built up in my office. Yeah, it's still built up. But like everything with Lego then was for kids. But I think what they've realised is as the kids have gotten older, they still love Lego, but they want more Lego that's suited to their tastes.
Yeah, Lego Technique.
Yeah, I never really got into the technique stuff. No, it's a bit too graphic design for me. I was more on the art side of the industry.
Oh, right. See, I loved Lego Technique purely for the cars because when you turn the steering wheel, the wheels would turn as well. I was like, I said, that is sick. And that was it. That was me converted.
Yeah.
So, what kind of art was it you did then?
I did a lot of ink, a lot of black ink work.
Yeah.
I started off with, so I did A-level art, and I was focused mainly on installations and sculptures, and then really big wall art. So my favourite thing to work on was brown paper. I'd get a big roll of brown paper.
You can use a white pencil and stuff up for the highlights and stuff, because it gives you that sort of nice mid-tone to work from, and all you need to do is add the dark and the light, and it's so good.
I guess it's kind of similar to playing with inks and skin, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can,
Because like, see, for example, like you've got really quite pale skin, so all I need to do is make sure I kind of up the contrast a little bit more, so the darks are darker, and then your skin does a lot of the work for me.
Right.
And what that allows is it's going to heal a lot better because I'm not having to put as much white ink into the skin and stuff like that. Because that doesn't really hold anyway. But when you're tattooing sort of people with like sort of darker skin tones and stuff like that, then it becomes a bit of a challenge because you need to use more ink and you need to use more black and stuff like that.
Right.
Like the first time I tattooed a black dude, I couldn't believe how difficult it was.
Really?
Because I wasn't used to tattooing with like my mid-tone, essentially, the skin contrast being so dark. And I was like, right, but it turned out really nice. But it was a nice learning experience. And I made sure that I got a lot more people with darker skin tones in after that, just so I could make sure that every time I've got someone in now that I'm the man for it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was a nice experience. But that, see that line work, drawing and stuff like that you're talking about, that would actually transfer over to tattooing quite nicely.
You know what? A question I often got asked, especially when I was competing regularly, is what would you be doing if you weren't fighting? And I often said tattooing.
Yeah.
Like I could have quite easily got into being a tattoo artist, because it's, I mean, the challenge of layering ink into the skin is very, very similar to the way I would work anyway with pencils or ink or even watercolors to a point.
Yeah.
I've actually done a couple of tattoos on friends of
Really?
mine. Yeah. So the tattoo right next to the one that you're doing is my granddad one.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
yeah,
back.
yeah.
That was done by a guy called Matt Bagwell, who's over in the US.
Right.
Then on the back of the other leg, I've got my California tattoo, which is No Bad Days. It's a palm tree, and that was done by Chris Stewart. And
Right.
then after I got those tattoos, I tattooed boxing gloves on both of those guys. So I have a little bit of an understanding of how to, the challenge obviously is, when you're using ink or pencil, as soon as you make contact, you're in contact, and then it's the pressure that you put into the pencil.
Yeah, that makes it darker.
That makes it darker.
Yeah.
But then with a tattoo gun, you have to manage the needles in the skin, which was a real challenge. And the other thing is the shading's the opposite. With a pencil, I would go across to shade. Yeah. And you push into
we
the
brush
skin,
it. Yeah. Did you feel it when you first tattooed that it felt like the machine was running away from you?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the one thing I sort of thought was the hardest when I first started tattooing. Was I went to tattoo and it felt like, whoa! I was like, this is different from a pencil.
Yeah.
But
so what's your background then? Did you study art?
So I went to college to sort of like study graphic design, and it's art it is art, but the only reason I chose that was because it was a sort of like realistic application of art in the real world. Like making a career out of art, it's not going to happen. Yeah, but it could happen. Like, I mean, your odds of succeeding are significantly improving by attempting. But I was just like, I want to actually get a 9-to-5 with art, and graphic design was the first thing that came to mind. And I also think that I used the graphic design in college just as a means of putting adulthood on hold. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then I literally just landed on tattooing by chance, because I was a member of this bodybuilding forum, because I used to be a really, really skinny guy. And then for some reason on this website, I would just, it was called rippedglutes.net. And then
what a name. What a name.
And then what I would do is I would just upload my drawings and stuff like that, and some women were like, oh, you should start tattooing. And then I was like, I'd love to. Well, I just said it to be nice. I didn't have a clue about tattooing. I didn't have any tattoos, and I was like, I couldn't afford the tattoo kit. And then she was like, how much is a tattoo kit? And I was like, you know what? I was like, I'll go check. And I think a sort of like beginner set was like £300, something like that. And she went, right, give me a bank details. I'll just transfer you that right now. And I was like, what? And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do it, because I'm not going to bump her. I know I'm not. And then that was it. The rest was history. The next again week, I managed to pay her back, bought her a nice bouquet of flowers. And then 6 months later, I got nominated for Best UK Newcomer twice, and I was still tattooing in my house at the time.
Amazing.
Like, I was like the best scratcher around. And that was it. And it's just, basically overnight, I went from being very poor, not really having any career prospects, to, that was it, my life has changed, and I'm still doing it. I'll always do it, and that's just amazing that, because I could have just said no and I wouldn't be sitting here tattooing you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't not believe in fate or anything like that, but like, it's hard not to sometimes, you know what I mean?
Had you not met that individual, and had they not been so kind as to offer to buy that kit for you, it's going to be a complete different career change. Well, so what did you picture yourself doing when you were growing up as a kid?
I thought when I was growing up that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I remember just being angry most of my adulthood, because I didn't have supportive parents. I don't speak to them. So they never really spoke to me about careers or planting any ideas in my mind or anything like that. So a seed needs to be planted. It's usually planted by the parents. I mean, that's not there. you kind of just end up in this frustrated place. So I didn't know what to do. I was so angry, frustrated. I was quite a short-tempered guy, and then I just landed on tattooing, and turns out I love it. You know what I mean? A few shit tattoos later, and I soon caught up with no any tattoos. You know?
Have you done many on yourself?
Yeah, just on my legs, man. They're
yeah.
absolutely horrific. But I thought that would be the end of my bad tattoos. But I went up north to tattoo with the Stoltman brothers.
Right.
So these are the world's strongest brothers. Tom Stoltman's world's strongest man. Luke Stoltman's Europe's strongest man, and Harry's just getting into strongman.
Funnily enough, I've just got a Stoltman tattoo, a Stoltman T-shirt.
Yeah.
I was up visiting the Outlaw Rum guys,
Oh.
and they sponsor them.
Wow.
Yeah, and he gave me a couple of pieces of Outlaw Rum
Yeah,
hat, and there was a
great guys.
Stoltman shirt in there as well. Yeah.
So this tattoo here was done by Harry Stoltman.
Really?
So I set them the challenge. I went up north. It's on their channel, and then I was like, right. I took up fake skin, and I was like, I'll go out the room. I was like, but we'll put free chili peppers on the page, and whoever does the best one will get to tattoo me. And it's absolutely agony. Like, look at the state of the lines of that. Like, absolutely shocking. And I'm like thinking when he's doing it, you know, like, that's not going to hold. That's not going to stay in. Oh, it's there.
There
That
it
shit's
is.
solid.
Still there.
But see if a tattoo makes you laugh, it's a good tattoo.
You know what? I've become far more inclined to feel like that towards tattoos as I've gotten older. You know,
Oh.
especially speaking to like other tattoo artists and stuff, friends of mine. Like when I was tattooing those boxing gloves, like that was a proper like tattoo party kind of
Yeah.
circumstance. It was after the Ink and Iron Festival on the Queen Mary in Los Angeles.
All right.
And I'd met my friends for a bit of food in that evening, and they said, "Hey, what are you doing tonight? We're booked into a hotel in Beverly Hills. Let's go back and get the machine set up, and we'll just get some tattoos done." And they said, "Yeah, you can tattoo us." And I've tried to talk them out of it. I'm like, "You know, these tattoos are going to be terrible." They were like, "Yeah, but you know, that's kind of part of the experience, because every
Yeah.
time we'll look at them, we'll go, oh, that was from that moment." I got a Scarman tattooed. I got a little Scarman on the back of this leg, and I got that done at the same time. And just a random tattoo, but every time I look at it, I think to myself, you know, that was a good night. That was good memories with good people.
Oh, definitely. One of my best moments getting tattooed was when I went down to London to see my mate Tony. Now, he's a very good tattooist as well. And the both of us idiots just ended up tattooing portraits of each other on each other. So when I'm in the gym doing tricep extensions, I've got this fucking idiot on the back of my arm. And then now every time he goes for a shit, he's got a portrait of me looking up at him like that with a Salvador Dali moustache.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, it's so stupid.
Brilliant. Oh, I love it. I love it.
So what was I going to ask? So see, something that I wanted to ask you, see your full reptile clothing, is that anything to do with, you know, when people talk about like the reptilian part of the brain, is that anything to do with that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So it came from, because I've got my book's called Part Reptile, and that kind of like, people don't really understand why the book's called Part Reptile and why the company's called Full Reptile. And so the reason why Full Reptile came about was from talking about the reptilian brain. And when, you know, sometimes when you see someone fight, like you can see like Paul Craig when he's standing on the scales, like he's all fired up, he's very warlike, you know. And then someone like Robbie Lawler or Vanderlei Silva, who just fall into that reptilian brain mindset when they're competing.
Yeah.
They get so tuned into that fight or flight, and it's never flight for those guys.
Yeah.
It's a very instinctive state for them to be in. And I mean, obviously the triune brain theory and the way that the brain's divided into three parts, the reptilian brain, the old mammalian brain, the new mammalian brain, it doesn't quite hold up. It's not exactly right, but the analogy works nicely.
Yeah.
And the reptilian brain for me that's the part that you rely on when you're in high pressure situations. The thing that helps you make decisions that are going to help you stay alive.
Yeah.
You know, it's the survival part of the brain is the reptilian brain. But that's become a bit skewed in the modern world, and a lot of people, the reptilian brain kind of runs the show. It kind of takes over, so then it starts to fuel their greed instincts and stuff. And, you know, so Full Reptile it's got two sides to it. One side of Full Reptile is to be fully within the reptilian brain and fully focused in that fight or flight survival mode, to be very warlike in your mind, and to allow your new mammalian brain and your old mammalian brain to kind of switch off and let the responsibility pass to the part of your brain that is supposed to keep you alive.
Yeah.
But then the other thing as well is full is another word for satiated, right? Like if you're content, and if your reptilian brain's content, then you're not going to be trying to climb over other people to either secure your own place in the world or better your place in the world.
Yeah.
So it's a dual purpose name. The reptilian brain being, allow that part of your mind to take over when you're in fight situations, so you've not got that cross chatter of three parts of the brain arguing with one another. Like a good example. If I'm in a fight, like say when I fought Marcus Davis, my sister was in the crowd, and my sister's got a very distinct voice.
Yeah.
So when I'm competing and she's shouting, I can hear her in an arena of 16,000 people. I can pick her voice out.
Yeah.
I could still do it on the video today if I was watching it. But that's something that pulls you out of that reptilian brain, because then all of a sudden you start to go into your old and new mammalian brain, where you're thinking, how is this environment that I'm in now affecting the other people in my life that I care for? And then you get that cross chatter, because you've got that concern with how are they dealing with it? Are they scared? Are they concerned? Like fighting in London. I mean, I fought twice at the O2 Arena. One was a really good night, one was a really bad night.
Right.
But my parents were there for both. And I experienced the fight through my own experience, but I also experienced it through theirs.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what my mum would have been going through to be sitting cage side watching me go in there to fight. Absolutely fine if I knocked the guy out, but then the second time around I was knocked out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you realise that you're not the only person in there. So that's the thing that kind of detaches you from your reptilian brain.
Yeah.
Because you go, hang on a minute, it's not just about me anymore. Now I've got to think about other people. And that cross chatter is not a good place to be.
Yeah.
It confuses your mind when you're trying to deal with the person in front of you, and you can become distracted and sidetracked, and it's so to try and get into that state of the reptilian brain is really difficult.
Yeah. I'd imagine, so see how with being would you say staying in that sort of reptilian brain focus is easier when the UFC arena was full, or Fight Island when it was quieter?
That's a difficult question, because I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
I think some people really thrive well from a crowd.
Yeah.
Like the very first event where there was no crowd, Johnny Walker was on the card. And you know what Johnny Walker's like, he's a performer. He loves a big crowd, he likes to perform for people. And he had a terrible night that night, and I think it was because he couldn't find that rhythm within himself where he's performing for anybody. Because they're not there to witness him, he's not hearing them and seeing them. And
thrive off that energy of the crowd. Yeah.
But then other people have had better performances in Fight Island or in those empty arenas, because there isn't the cross chatter and all the chaos going on.
Yeah.
I think it's very different from one person to the next. Some fighters just don't seem to be able to switch on when there's no crowd.
Yeah.
But I think other fighters respond quite well to it. And personally for me, I think it's the much more intimate environments where it's quiet. I mean, the downside is if you sit in cage side and you start yelling at the referee, everyone can hear you, and that's what I learned. But those quiet, intimate spaces allow you to really tune into the actual violence of the situation.
Yeah, it's like, see, when I first watched the Fight Island one, the punches, you don't, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That is, you feel it in your chest when you're watching it, you're like, that is got to hurt, like.
You can hear the thud, you can hear two guys ramming into the fence, and you can hear the octagon creaking and straining, and you can hear the floorboards underneath the mats in the octagon shaking. It's a lot of stuff that you do hear when there's a crowd in there, but it's a lot less. It's a lot less.
Yeah, and you don't really tune into it as much as you would have.
And I tell you one of the worst ones is when someone's on the floor getting ground and pounded, and their head is against the canvas, and they get hit with an elbow because it thuds through the cage.
Oh man, and
they're the moments where you can kind of feel that in your soul a little bit.
That's horrible. So see, when I had Paul Craig, for example, because he's still an active fighter, and I sort of brought up like Tyson Fury, like the reason he went in a sort of like mad depressive sort of like state is because all he had prepared for was that fight with Klitschko. Hadn't planned any further past that. Did you always plan for something else after fighting? And did that get ruined by the sort of like the wolf syndrome and getting basically like told that you can't fight again?
It did. But I had a few different kind of peaks and troughs in my career. The first one was like in my journey up to the UFC. Right before I made my debut, everything was about, I've got to get to the UFC. If I win this fight, I'm a step closer to the UFC. And if I lost the fight, I felt like I was slipping much further away from my goal. When I actually made that first walkout at UFC 89, what was weird is that I'd subconsciously, I'd been there so many times. I'd visualized myself there so many times. It was the first time walking out to a fight I had no nerves. And it was really it was odd.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, I've achieved my goal. And I'd actually not thought any further past actually getting to the UFC.
Oh, really?
So I'd had 2 fights in the UFC and then realized I need to reassess my goals and start aiming for something higher.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a strange one. And then after I fought GSP and I started to I was on a bit of a slide. So I lost to George, then I got knocked out by Condit at the O2 Arena. Then I lost to Anthony Johnson, who just buried me for 15 minutes. And then I had a really frustrating one with Chris Lytle, where I didn't go in there to win, I went in there to fight. And at that point, my mentality was this was my last fight and I was retiring. Because I always said to myself, if I got cut by the UFC, I'm not going to go back onto the smaller shows and try and work my way back up. I would have just redirected. My plan was to go to university and study philosophy.
Oh, really?
That was what I wanted to do. So I always felt like my life would take a few different turns and I'd do a few things. You know, I've always wanted to be a writer. I'd like to get back into art.
Yeah.
You know, so I had other options, studying as well, you know, going to university and studying philosophy or literature or something like that. So I was looking forward to other phases of my life, but I always kind of imagined that they'd be on my terms.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it felt like it wasn't on my terms anymore. Like I was losing fights that I was trying to win. You know, my motivation was slipping when I'd never really had a problem with motivation before. I was angry and frustrated because then, like, you realise that you're not like a part of a family that are all building these shows to make MMA great. You're actually a part of a network that you just get kind of filtered out for the next guy to come along and take your place. And that was quite frustrating as well, I think. But
so, what fighters nowadays are impressing you the most, do you think? Like, you were up with Paul Craig yesterday, and before he used to say that he was the gatekeeper of the light heavyweight division, when I asked him on the podcast, I was like, would you still class yourself as the gatekeeper to that division? And he said, nah, fuck, he's like, I'm chasing that top spot. What's your thoughts on his fighting? Do you think he's got the chances of taking that top spot?
yeah, absolutely. The only thing that surprised me, he mentioned a few weeks ago that he'll be retiring at the end of this year. Like he mentioned about retiring in December.
Wow.
I saw that pop up on an interview and I thought to myself, well, maybe he's just having one hard run at the belt and then he's, you know, that's his way of staying motivated because it's a short period of time before he's going to hang his gloves up.
Yeah.
But in his last few performances, I felt like he's really found his rhythm.
Yeah. Oh, you know. And I was asking him about that because I said to him, like, when you used to fight, obviously he looked great. He's a world-class fighter. But then all of a sudden he looked like a completely different fighter, like he stood taller in his fights and stuff like that. And he said a big part of that was due to the fact that he's brought other people on board and he's now got, not a psychologist, but a sort of like mental coach or something like that. And I know the Stokeman brothers, they've got one and stuff like that as well. If you were to take another fight, is that something you'd consider as well? Or do you rate it?
I do think it's really valuable. And I think, like if I look back at my old team, you know, Team Roughhouse, we had some real animals back in the day, and we were running the lighter weight divisions. Like we had the best welterweights in the country at one point, all fighting out at the same gym. You know, with myself and Jimmy Warled and Paul Daly. But as I looked around the team, I realised that all these guys have got something about them, a physical attribute that makes them formidable.
Yeah.
Right? Jimmy Warled is incredibly strong.
Yep.
Paul Daly is naturally very powerful, very explosive. Andre Winner's really quick. You know, so everybody I was sparring with and training with all had these physical attributes that were a challenge for me.
Yeah.
In the process of that, I realised that my attribute is my mental strength.
Yeah.
You know, so the one thing I never really struggled with was that self-belief. I was always a bit unreasonably confident, if I'm honest. But you know, so that's one thing that I don't think I'd have to worry about too much. Would be the mental side of it. But then when I see guys like another good example is Tom Breeze, who's from Birmingham, a fantastic fighter in every range of the sport, but just struggles to believe in himself.
Yeah.
And I've seen that so many times, like guys that are great in the gym, but then they can't put it together on the night when the pressure's on.
Yeah.
And like for Paul Craig, I think a big part of his issue at the start was realizing how good he is.
Yeah.
Like realizing how intimidating he is on the other side of the octagon to his opponents.
He's a scary dude. Man.
Scary dude. He's tall, he's rangy. I remember being in Australia when he was hitting pads, and it was echoing around the hotel. And I said to him, I said, you're going to kill somebody with that kick one day.
Yeah.
Like if he lands that body kick, he's going to slice someone in two. I mean, you saw what he did to Jamal Hill's shoulder.
Mate, disgusting.
Yeah, there's a viciousness to his style, which I love. And I think that I was at their gym yesterday and teaching a few bits, and he has loads of questions. He's got a thirst for knowledge, which is great to see as well.
That's what continues growth. A lot of people think that they've just learned it. Like even with tattooing, people feel like I know everything. Then that's probably when you should look to do something else.
Yeah.
You know, because you can never truly master anything. And as soon as you think that you've mastered it, that's arrogance taking over.
Yeah.
That's no like your experience and knowledge. That is just arrogance coming through. And do you think that's maybe the case with sort of like, see when I look at Conor McGregor fighting now, completely different fighter to when he was ages ago. It just, I don't know, it almost looks like he's, I don't want to disrespect the guy, but it almost looks like it's to a degree arrogance-fueled fighting, you know what I mean? He's stiffer and it's just, it's not the same anymore.
No, I think Conor's an interesting one because he rose to the top of the sport in a way that nobody else had experienced before. And with that came a level of intimidation when he stepped in there with his opponents. And I mean, like look when he stepped in there against Jose Aldo. So I followed them for a part of the press tour during the build up to the Jose Aldo fight. You know the bit where they were in Dublin and he jumped up and stole the belt off him. Like, I was the side of the stage for that, and he had this level of intimidation because he was so confident and so comfortable. He was always doing everything with a laugh and a smile, and it would be unnerving. Yeah. And when you saw how he broke Jose Aldo before that fight, made him run onto that counter punch, then you think to yourself, that is a commodity that most fighters don't have. That ability to just break somebody before the fight started. But then that is dependent on success. Yeah. And as soon as he starts to have a couple of fights, like one of the worst things that happened was when he was running away from Nate Diaz in the third round of their rematch. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people looked at that and thought, okay, there's his vulnerability. And I think some of that aura kind of fell away from him then. Yeah,
because I noticed he didn't really have as much success with the way he would go about the pre-fights and stuff like that. And it's almost like everyone was kind of used to it now.
That's it. And it worked well for him against Cowboy, because Cowboy expected him to be like that, and he wasn't. So like at the press conference for that, he was respectful and he was calm and he was complimenting Cowboy. And that was really uncomfortable for Donald Cerrone, because he didn't expect that version of Conor McGregor. Yeah. And I think that worked quite well for him. But then in fights where he stepped in against someone like, obviously Dustin Poirier, they don't have that fear or concern of him. And then that aura that he has when he steps into the octagon's lost, which means that then we have to see the rest of his game. And he's excellent at what he does. But there are certain facets of his game that don't hold up at the top level. Yeah. And I think he's tried to fill those gaps with that intimidation factor, which I think he's lost now.
Yeah. And do you think, like, I've seen a lot of people saying that they don't think he's a top 10 fighter anymore. That's quite a ballsy claim.
It is. But then, he is in the deepest weight class in the UFC. The lightweight division is probably the most difficult weight class. It's, you look down. I mean, in the top 15, you've got Gregor Gillespie and Mateus Gamrot. Like people that on any day could be a world champion. Yeah. And McGregor's trying to hold a position in the top 5 with all of these sharks on his tail, and every single person knows that Conor McGregor's game is rather one-sided compared to the rest of the division. Yeah. So if I'm Gregor Gillespie or Gamrot or Makhachev is another good example. Like, I look at Conor McGregor and think to myself, okay, this is a person I can beat. This is a person who has a finite skill set that I can work around. Yeah. And so Conor does a really good job of trash talking to keep himself right at the top of the division. And as Daniel Cormier said over the weekend, the rules don't apply to Conor McGregor because he is the money fight. He's the biggest pay-per-view draw in the sport still. So he can always demand those big opponents instead of having to fight down the division and potentially risk losing to someone ranked 12, 13, 14, which is quite possible to happen.
Yeah. Do you think that it's kind of, a double-edged sword, because obviously he's in that position where he can negotiate money, and he can put up a strong argument for it, and they're almost going to do anything he tells. But do you think that's kind of affecting UFC how it is with fighters now saying that they're not getting paid enough and they're comparing themselves to other fighters?
I think it is causing some issues. I mean, obviously the issue at the moment is around the heavyweight division, and Ngannou, like he's fighting at 270. If he beats Cyril Gane and then comes to re-sign his UFC contract, he's in a really strong negotiating place.
Yeah.
But the UFC also have to come to the table to meet his expectations, because he also has options to go into boxing. And yeah, he might only have 1 or 2 fights in boxing, and it'd probably work out terribly for him.
Yeah, I can't see that going
But do you
well.
want 10 fights in the UFC at $500,000, or do you want 2 in boxing and make more money?
Yeah, I know. Because you've got to take health into consideration as well, because every time you step in that ring is a risk.
That's it. And these guys are only getting better.
Yeah.
Like the heavyweights coming up, they're only getting better. You know, even the young guys coming up, like Tom Aspinall, like they're going to be problems in the future for these guys. Because they've got the power, they've got the speed, but they're also very, very technical.
And they've got youth.
They've got youth, they've got time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the big names, they do seem to be on that, like, that cusp of, like, there becomes a certain stage where progress halts almost. You can't really, you're kind of limited by your biological clock at that point.
For sure. But I think one thing that is interesting about the heavyweight division is you tend to find a lot of older fighters in the heavyweight division.
Yeah, because more bombs.
Wisdom plays a big part. Like if you look at Alistair Overeem or someone like that, like they're into their 40s and they've got 60 fights on their record, and they've got this wisdom and awareness and understanding of their own range. Yeah. So they can take smarter risks. And not get caught out. But then even so, like we saw what happened with Overeem against Ngannou. He just got blitzed and absolutely annihilated with that uppercut. I think the physical attributes plays a lot more into the lower divisions. I think the heavyweight division you can get away with being older. But I think we've got Glover Teixeira as the light heavyweight champ right now. Right. But I think the smaller divisions, like lightweight, welterweight, and anything below that, featherweight, if you're into your 30s in those divisions, you're on your way out. Yeah. Whereas if you're a heavyweight, you can prolong that career into your 40s and still be very successful. Yeah. The margin for error is much more narrow at heavyweight. So I think wisdom plays a much bigger role. Yeah. Fuck it, I'm going to get started tomorrow. Hey, with the progress that you made in tattooing, in a couple of years' time, you'll be a UFC champ.
So do you think UFC's in a good place with, just in general, and do you think like these cross-platform sort of like crossovers are kind of ruining it a bit? What's your thoughts on that? Like the Jake Pauls calling out Dana White and all this crap. What's your opinion on all of that?
It's weird. It's not what I would like to be happening, but unfortunately MMA is in a position where we kind of need someone to do it, and almost everybody is at the, they're at the mercy of Dana's purse strings. Right. So Jake Paul's the anomaly because he doesn't rely on the UFC or Dana for any kind of income. So he can be antagonistic. Yeah. And so it was always going to take someone like a Jake Paul to be able to cause these kind of, conversations to be happening about fighter pay. It needs to happen. It's frustrating because, we all want MMA to be growing and everybody to be benefiting from it. But it has kind of started to plateau a bit. Yeah. The money started to level out. Like, these guys should be getting paid a lot more. Francis Ngannou shouldn't be fighting for $500,000. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Because he is literally risking his life every time he steps in there, No. And someone's making that money because that money's being made. The pay-per-view numbers are showing it. Yeah. So I do think conversations need to be had about fighter pay, but I don't want it to take away from the essence of the sport, the actual martial arts.
Because that's what it feels is happening now with the crossover and stuff like that. Like, it's almost as if people aren't appreciative that the fact that they are fighting in the top sort of like company. Yeah. It feels like it's kind of, it's like kind of money kind of ruins it a bit. You know what I mean?
It does a bit. And you look at other organisations like Bellator and PFL and One Championship. They're all great organisations, really good organisations, and pay well. But then it depends what you want out of the sport. If you want to be the best in the world, you've got to be in the UFC.
Yeah.
Like, if you're the best in one championship or the best in Bellator, absolutely you can make an argument that you're the best in the world. But if you're the UFC champion, most people are going to agree with you.
I think it's because the UFC is the household name. Like, Paddy the Barry, he said that going to the UFC, he actually took a price cut. But look at his fucking following. It blew up with that one fight.
That's it.
Like,
That's it.
It's almost like you have got to make a sacrifice somewhere in order to gain somewhere else. And fair play to the guy, but his first fight, he almost got sparked.
I know.
What was
Could
that?
have been completely derailed by one shot.
Yeah.
The benefit in being with the UFC is that you've got a platform that most other people can't reach.
Yeah.
Now the UFC will put a massive marketing budget behind you, and they'll promote you. So you've got the potential to bring in sponsors that you couldn't have had with other organisations. But then the industry changed when the sponsorship market changed within the UFC.
Yeah, because did they not like change to like only Reebok clothing and stuff like that? And that kind of crippled a lot of UFC fighters or like external way of sort of like getting sponsor money and stuff like that, didn't it?
It did. Well, so when I first started with the UFC, I signed in 2008. And back then, you could have pretty much any sponsors that you wanted as long as they didn't clash with UFC sponsors.
Right.
So they all had to be signed off. So like, you couldn't have an energy drink company sponsoring you, or unless it was Monster.
Yeah.
Was it Monster at the time? Oh, it was Zions at the time, but then it changed over to Monster.
Right.
And then you couldn't. I had a conversation going with Triumph Motorcycles.
Right.
And they were going to supply me with a bike when I moved to the US, but then because of Harley Davidson. It's not that one on the head. So it was a bit frustrating, but at the same time, I could have Earache Records sponsoring me, and I had all kinds of cool sponsors that were like small brands, startups, people that would just love to see the name of their company on a banner. Then they did away with the open market sponsorship, so any sponsors that wanted to work with UFC fighters had to pay the UFC a taxation per year of $100,000.
Right.
And a lot of the smaller companies I was working with were paying me a few $100 to be on my banner.
Yeah.
So they didn't have $100,000 to pay the UFC before they even started sponsoring. So that kind of killed it off. That really limited the sponsorship pool. Then they did away with the banners as well, which was a massive impact because that's one way that you can promote your sponsors.
Yeah.
And then the Reebok deal came in, and everybody now looks like Power Rangers. They're all wearing the same clothes. And I always say this, if uniforms worked for professional athletes and individual sport athletes, WWE would have done it.
Yeah.
And they didn't. Like, you want these people to have a character.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be able to walk out with my bandana now, and that was my signature.
Really?
Wouldn't be able to walk out with it,
That is absolutely mental.
Yeah.
But it is kind of ruined individuality to some degree.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's made it difficult for the fighters to show their personality.
Yeah, no, that is a shame. So, I've got to ask you, man, with the Jake Paul Tyrone Woodley fight, what did you think of it?
Honestly, I just feel bad for Tyron. I feel sorry for him because, like, I understand why he took the fight, because obviously the payday is ridiculous, and what he got out of those two Jake Paul fights would cast an enormous shadow over all of his UFC purses and sponsorship while he was fighting with the UFC. So that's one reason why the Jake Paul phenomenon and the Triller events and all the kind of abstract versions of combat sports we're getting, they're good because these guys can go in and cash out and make a bit of cash from their name. The downside is that someone like Tyron Woodley goes out with a loss to a YouTuber, and it just diminishes his legacy. Tyron Woodley's a great champion. I've never been a massive fan of his fighting style because I kind of feel when someone wants to be fighting and when they don't.
Yeah.
And I've never felt like Tyron Woodley really enjoys fighting. I think he was a wrestler that came out of college and realised he had a skill set that he needed to find a trade for, and MMA was the right option. But he should have beaten Jake Paul. And the reason he didn't beat him the first time is because he's afraid of getting tired. Like, he holds back. He don't want to punch himself out and then feel vulnerable.
Right.
And if you watch his fights against Wonderboy, he does the same thing. He hangs back against the fence. He's very defensive. When he fought Damian Maia, I think he defended 17 takedowns in that fight over 25 minutes and didn't stop him. Like, there are opportunities where, you defend 10 takedowns and then you start putting it on the guy.
Yeah.
And he hangs back and waits because he doesn't want to feel tired and vulnerable. And I think that he fell victim to his own mind in the Jake Paul fight. You know, go back to what you were saying earlier about a sports psychologist. I think he could really do with one.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a massive benefit, but he might be past that in his own head where he thinks he needs one.
Yeah.
And then going into the second Jake Paul fight, it was never going to be any better because now he had the pressure of the first one on his shoulders. And he knows for sure he's not going to get another rematch. Like, he was lucky to fall into that one with Tommy Fury pulling out.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of animosity and stuff like around the sort of like second fight, because did you see the hand signal accusation?
Yeah.
Giving us all the bollocks.
Don't buy it.
No.
I'll tell you what that was, and the reason why it happened is because Jake Paul had feinted like he was going to throw a jab to the body.
Yeah.
Tyron's got a particular way of blocking, and he goes, he stands up against the fence. You'll see it in the Wonder Boy fight. He goes, so he's blocking high with one hand and he sweeps low with the other one.
Yeah.
Jake Paul postured like he was going to go to a jab to the body, which is what that motion is. He's feinting like he's going to go to the body, and Tyron went as if he was going to sweep the punch out of the way.
Right.
So if you look at that from Jake Paul's perspective, what he's seeing is Tyron with a really weak single guard on one side, and he's removing his guard, removing the guard on the other. So when he went to feint for the second time, unfortunately for Tyron, he went the opposite way and completely opened this up. I think Jake Paul expected to be able to go around this guard, when in actuality Tyron just moved it out the way and took a clean shot on the temple.
It was a beauty of a shot.
It was a lovely punch. I mean, he's a big kid. He's a 200-pound boy. He's
boy.
what, 24 years old.
To be fair, to that guy's credit, he's training like a warrior.
Of course
Like you can't discredit that. I think it was even Manny Pacquiao said that he gained a lot of respect from him after seeing how he trained, and he was like, you know what, fair play to him. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. But what you were saying earlier on about, do you feel like, see how fighters like Mayweather and stuff like that are almost ruining their legacy with these sort of like gimmicky fights? Because did you ever see the fight where he fought the Asian kid?
Yeah, the Japanese kid in Rising.
But that was like the most blatant bullshit I've ever seen. Like, it was a joke.
Yeah. See, I think he was... I think what happened there, I think Floyd Mayweather was set up. I think they told him that was going to be an exhibition match.
Right.
And then when the fight started, the kids started to come for him.
Right.
And Mayweather was like, oh, okay. Oh, this is not an exhibition match. And then he put him down. Because the kid's a good fighter. I can't think what his name is now. He's a fantastic kickboxer. Really good kickboxer.
Lethal.
Very skilled.
Yeah.
But the way it was presented in the build-up to it was that it was going to be an exhibition match.
Yeah.
And then when it started, the kid was coming for him. And I just think Mayweather was like, okay, I'm going to have to put it on you and hurt you.
I know, it was a weird one.
Yeah.
But what was I going to ask? So you had a altercation with Herb Dean. So do you think that referees almost have too much pressure on their shoulders now, because they can end the fight too early, too late? And do you think that some of these sort of like old school referees like Herb Dean are almost too scared to do their job now?
It is a very, very difficult job to do. There's no doubt about it. And you know, when you've been criticised for stopping a fight too early, then there's the tendency to leave them too late, and vice versa. If you've stopped a fight too late, then there's a tendency to jump in and stop it too early. There's no doubt that is a possibility. My only issue is when I see a referee that doesn't take ownership of something that in hindsight could be recognised as a mistake. Like, in the moment, it's sometimes difficult. There's a lot of things going on. Sometimes it's difficult to recognise that this fight needs stopping, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, but that was
in
so
the aftermath.
blatant,
That was for me, especially with it being the second one of the night, and because I've been octagon side before when it's happened, like against CB Dollaway in St. Petersburg. That was a really bad stoppage that Herb stood there and watched over and left him for a minute 15 taking shots. He was curled up in a ball. And when the round stopped, Herb stood over him waiting for him to get up. And he said, if you don't get up, I'll call the fight. And CB Dollaway wanted saving in that moment. He even said it in his post-fight interviews. So that always stuck in my mind. And then on that night, obviously, there was the late stoppage with the heavyweights where Pessoa went down and took more shots than he needed to. But then the Jai Herbert one was just really egregious. I could see he was unconscious from where I was sitting. And they're moments where I feel like the referee should be trained to recognise that the signals of unconsciousness, like the fencing position where his arms are doing things where, you know, he looks like he's punching and blocking at the same time, and he's not consciously doing it.
So you feel like there's almost an element of complacency as well with some of these refs, possibly?
I think sometimes when referees get to that level, like Herb Dean referees more fights than anybody else in the UFC. You know, he's the most utilised referee. And of course he's not going to be perfect every time. But all I would like to see from him is if he does have a bad stoppage, he can go back, even if it's in his own time, he can look at it and go, that should have been a bit earlier. Or I could have left that a little bit longer, or I made this mistake, I stepped in too early, or whatever the mistake is, I would just like that self-observation. And after that event happened, that for me would have been it.
Yeah.
I would have got on the plane and gone home and it would have been it. But the thing that spurred me on to respond was the video he put out when he got to the airport. And it was so kind of arrogant and nonchalant, and he shat all over me. He's like, you know, if you think you're the smartest person in the room, and it's like that it just rubbed me up the wrong way because I could see he wasn't taking any ownership of it. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you've got the likes of Leon Roberts, who's one of the best UFC referees in my opinion from the UK. Works with Mark Goddard a lot. Now, his last fight that he refereed in the UFC was Jose Aldo against Peter Yan. And we can watch that back and we could say, okay, that fight could have probably been stopped a couple of minutes earlier because Aldo took a real beating.
Yeah.
The point of difference is that Leon retired after that fight because he took it on himself. He watched that fight back and he knew to himself that he could have probably stopped it a bit earlier.
Yeah.
And he retired. He stepped away from the sport. And now that is extreme because he is a very good referee.
Yeah.
And I can watch that fight back and make an excuse as to why he didn't stop it. But he took that on himself. And that's what I want all referees to do. Because not only are you there to protect the fighter, you're also there to protect the sport of mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
And we're a young sport. I mean, 25, 30 years old. Like, we need to be conscious that we're protecting this sport and the individuals in it into the later years of their life.
Yeah.
You know?
No, definitely.
I mean, we've got this drama with Mark Hunt at the moment, going in and fighting Brock Lesnar when Brock Lesnar failed the drug test.
Oh.
And now he's in legal battles with the UFC because of it, you know?
Seen that. That's...
Like, that's going to happen more and more the less these fighters are protected.
Yeah. Do you think there's a problem in the UFC or just fighting in general with sort of like PEDs and stuff like that?
It's a lot less now they've got USADA on board.
Yeah.
I think USADA have done a fantastic job of cleaning up the UFC.
Yeah.
I mean, like back in the day when I was around, it was free for all.
Yeah,
Free for all.
There was
I mean,
nothing. It was a totally different sport.
It was very
It was
different.
a freak show almost.
Like, I would look at somebody across the cage and I'm like, I know he's using something. I can
Yeah.
tell. I can tell by his skin complexion,
Oh,
by
you
the
can
acne
tell
on his
they look
back
kind of
and-
ballooned,
Yeah.
and it's just the muscle just looks watery. Yeah.
It does.
Well,
Skin looks thinner.
yeah.
And especially when people start to sweat and you're locked up with someone, you can smell it. There's like a metallic smell to
Yeah.
it. So it's
That'll be their livers and
There you
they just pump it out.
that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But I think USADA have done a great job because I think it's a real deterrent.
Yeah.
Like if you know at any point during the year someone can knock on your door and you've got to piss in a cup,
Yeah.
that changes things. And I'm not saying there aren't people that are playing the game and trying to get away with it and get around it. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are a few.
There's loads of
I
sort of
could probably
things you
point
can
a
do.
few out, but
Yeah.
they failed the eye test, as Jeff Nowitzki says. Like you can look at them and tell they're on steroids.
Yeah.
You know. But I do think there is a big improvement. We just need the rest of the sport to follow suit.
Yeah.
But USADA has had a trickle-down effect because anybody now that's in the lower levels of the sport, like if you're fighting for Cage Warriors and one day you hope of being in the UFC, you're not even going to start down that path because you don't want that psychological disadvantage of I've used steroids all the way through my career until I signed with the UFC and now I can't.
Because it will change you.
And then you fall off.
Yeah, so that would be like a strength athlete just coming off and starting to try his luck, trying to keep those numbers up on a natty show, and like
It's not really the same, is it?
Right, you're not the same person. You know, the same sort of like endorphins going through your brain. Sort of like the chemical balance is just totally different. Everything's totally different. I don't think people realise the detrimental side effects that steroids have in the body long term.
That's it.
Physically, psychologically, everything. Like I know a lot of people that have took steroids, and it's like a lot of them, like some of them have had to go on kidney dialysis and stuff like that. It fucks you up. It's a dangerous game.
Very.
But I don't think there's enough out there to assist people in it, because it seems like it's just a trial and error kind of thing. And there is some things out coming now that sort of like platforms that are there for sort of like strength athletes that want to basically just keep on top of it and stuff like that. So it is interesting that it's coming to light a lot more. People are speaking about it a lot more often. We know a guy who goes by the name of Trained by JP. He's very, very open about it. He's got like an app and stuff like that, where it's almost like a forum where people go and ask knowledge. And it's quite weird to see. Like it's good, but it's also kind of weird to see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something about it, like it's not that it doesn't sit right with me. It's like, wow, this is now available and it's interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But see, I don't mind it. I don't really have much of a problem with it. My issue with people using performance-enhancing drugs is when they're punching somebody else in the face.
Yeah.
Like, if you're, if you are challenging yourself to climb 14 peaks in a year, or, swim across the Atlantic, or whatever it is, if you're challenging yourself, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's when you're inflicting that power that you've gained from the performance-enhancing drugs on another human, and we know that's dangerous. Like, it's dangerous enough to punch somebody in the head in the first place.
Yeah.
So when you're now enhancing the power that these people can produce, and then they're punching them in the head, it's the impact is far greater than if it's just one person competing against themselves.
No, definitely. So see, with your fighting career and stuff like that, you were a very, very aggressive fighter. Like, you were, and when I'm speaking to you now, like I've seen your post-fight videos and stuff like that, where you're speaking, your persona is completely different. Well, I didn't know you on a personal level anyway, but has that got anything to do with your sort of like ayahuasca experience and stuff like that?
I think it has. I think it has, but I also think that was the environment that I was allowed to be that person.
Yeah.
Like, I always say that the person that you see when I was competing in the UFC that's who I am, but it's 20% of my personality with the volume turned up to 100.
Yeah.
Right? So the other parts of my personality in those moments, I can put them on the back shelf because I don't need them. Like, that's the moment where I can embrace that warlike mentality and I can be an animal.
Yeah.
So I allow myself to be.
Yeah, no, it was it was a very intimidating sight. I was like, holy shit. I was like, what's this guy going to be like tomorrow? When you steal my computer and start playing Forza. But what was your ayahuasca experience like? Because it's something I've always been interested in doing, because I've tried DMT, but because I've never done drugs in my life, I just went straight to the top, you know what I mean? And I've never smoked anything, never done anything like that, so I didn't have a clue how to inhale.
Right.
Incinerated my throat, so I felt like I was dying while I was about to go on a trip and stuff like that. What was the ayahuasca experience like for someone that's maybe sort of looking to do it?
It was far more, what's the best way of putting it? Far more spiritual and therapeutic than my experiences with other, especially with DMT. Like,
yeah, so you've done DMT as well?
Yeah. And I did ayahuasca first. So DMT is the active compound in ayahuasca, so you're effectively ingesting the same thing. But the difference is, with ayahuasca, they're taking the leaf and the vine, and they're combining them into a brew, and then you drink the brew, which has got the DMT in it.
Yeah.
And the enzymes from the leaves that they use, they inhibit the DMT being broken down in the stomach.
So it's a sort of like a slower, calmer kind of hit, as opposed to
a bungee jump into.
'Cause I've seen someone experiencing it as like DMT is almost like if you're in a rocket and you're taking off in it, it's like, holy shit, something's happening. Then when you get above the stratosphere, it's like, whoa, right, that's us here, we're chilling now. Ayahuasca, from what I've heard people talking about, it's almost like you just kind of like gently go into it, but you're out for a lot longer. So what was your experience and your visions like? Because people say it's so if you look at it from a science point, they'll say it's a hallucinogenic. But if you speak to anyone that does it, they'll say it's not a hallucination. They'll say it's far deeper than that.
It can be both. I mean, there is a lot of variance with ayahuasca because it's still naturally brewed, and a lot of it is down to the person that does the brewing. You know, there's a guy called Ron Wheelock who's very, very famous in South America, and
Right.
it was his medicine that I drank, his ayahuasca, and he's a very, very well-known ayahuasquero.
Yeah.
But then, like with DMT, see, DMT goes through that chemical process to refine it into a white powder.
Yeah.
For me, it takes a big part of the experience out of it. It's like, so if you imagine ayahuasca as like a valley, right? You start at the regular level, and the part of the process of ayahuasca is you drink it and then you start to descend into the valley. And in the pit of the valley is the deep ayahuasca experience, the deep psychedelic trip.
Yeah.
And then you start to walk out the other side of it. DMT is like you've not gone the down and the up, you bungee jump right into it and then you come out again. And because it's so different to how you were 2 minutes ago, it's so overwhelming you don't really get much from it. With ayahuasca, it's almost like it brings you into the experience and kind of holds you while you're there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had a lot of visuals. I had a lot of really, really vivid visualizations when I was drinking ayahuasca.
Wow.
But then sometimes my experience will be 8 hours long, 12 hours long. They can be very, very long, depending on the strength of it.
Are you in control of your body while you're out for it? Just
For the most part,
feel
some people
kind of
struggle.
semi-detached from your body?
Sometimes very detached.
Yeah.
Sometimes very detached. Like with smoking DMT, I remember I was sitting on a magnetic mattress, which does a lot to the blood flow and stuff. It enhances the experience. And I remember smoking it, and then as I went to lay back down, as my head touched the pillow, I had no body, and I was just like a ball of fluid in a bubble sitting on the pillow, and that's how I felt. That was my perception of myself. With ayahuasca, you have those moments where you feel like you disconnect, but you also feel like there are moments where you're very much within your body and you're in the experience.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like that with DMT.
No.
Like with ayahuasca, I felt very much like myself at certain times, but then other times I would feel like myself in a different life.
Yeah.
Or I would, like, I experienced myself as a wolf. I experienced myself as a tiger. I experienced myself as other people in past lives, which was something really unusual.
That's strange that you mentioned about the wolf, because I know Luke Stoltman and stuff like that. Almost, it's not like a shaman they go and see, but there's ways of sort of like tapping into that sort of like DMT, because obviously DMT is already there. And he was saying that because this woman, she sort of like just plays the drums, and he was like, honestly, he was like, before you know it, he was like, I turned into a wolf. And I'm often wondering if that was a sort of like another way of tapping into that DMT supply, and he did it that way as opposed to inhaling it from an external sort of like source.
I think there's a lot of ways of getting. So, I'm not sure whether you've ever read the Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Right, it definitely worth. I mean, the documentary is fantastic, DMT, the Spirit Molecule, but the book that Rick Strassman writes is even better, because you get some real interesting accounts of people that have had experiences, and they're talking through these experiences. I don't know, I feel like it taps into quite a lot, but what's clear in that book is that DMT is something that's accessible to the body in certain times of life. So like
birth and death.
Exactly, birth and death. And the differences between a natural birth and a C-section and a birth with painkillers and drugs. What it actually affects is the DMT release in the mother and the child. So with the natural birth, with no drugs or anything, is very much more, obviously it's very natural for us, but the body's way of dealing with it is the DMT release.
Yeah.
So the DMT is released, which actually then helps the bond between the mother and the child.
Yeah.
And in stressful, traumatic situations, near-death experiences, like you can imagine when you've probably heard the story of Donald Cerrone in the cave, swimming under the when he was cave diving. You've got to watch that. It's a Joe Rogan podcast, and he's talking about cave diving.
Right.
And he got stuck in a cave.
Oh shit!
He couldn't see anything. The silt all kicked up, and he couldn't find his way out. And he knew he had about 40 minutes of oxygen left.
Oh my god!
Like in those moments, when you're so close to death, I think the body releases DMT as a way of helping you transition. Like the stressful moments in your life. And I also think this is why a lot of fighters gravitate towards psychedelic experiences.
Yeah, it seems to be a recurring theme.
Yeah, because a stressful experience like a fight will release a tiny amount of DMT.
Yeah.
I think if you're able to get into that state, you do have access to DMT to help you process these environments.
Yeah, it'd probably help you envisage the win and stuff like that as well.
Yeah,
sort
for
of like
sure.
release that sort of inner confidence. So I know a few people that have done ayahuasca. Well, I know one person has done ayahuasca, but I know quite a few people that have done DMT. I've got a friend in Ireland called Willie Grattan, and he went to one of these ayahuasca retreats, and before it, he would sort of party, drink drugs, all of this. He did this experience, and he was like, Gordon, he was like, the best way to explain it was, and he's like, I know it sounds daft, but he was like, this entity, like God, spoke to me and told me to basically get a grip. And he was like, also, this deity laid out a plan for me. And he's like, and I'm not allowed to tell anybody about this plan. He's like, but now he's like a born-again Christian, he doesn't touch drugs, nothing like that. And I don't really see anybody doing ayahuasca or DMT and coming out of it for the worse. They always seem to come out of it for the better. And it's just, I feel like it's something that's not really looked into much, you know what I mean? And it's almost as if like the government and stuff like that's put a ban on it for some weird reason, when you're not going to walk past someone that's on an ayahuasca trip that's going to smash you up. You know what I mean? You'll not walk past a group of stoners that are going to smash you up. You know what I mean?
No.
You don't walk past someone that's on a mushroom trip. Why the fuck is that banned?
Because it frees your mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because it frees your mind. So, something that's far more familiar to us in this region of the world is psilocybin mushrooms, right? Now the association with magic mushrooms and all that kind of stuff, I don't like that.
I don't like calling it that either.
Because it
sounds junkish.
It belittles it. It does.
Yeah.
It does. It makes it like a party drug, and it's not. Like if you have the right dose of mushrooms, you don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to speak to anybody, because it's so close to an ayahuasca experience that it's too overwhelming to be in a party environment to be doing stupid things. And I think that, I mean, if you go back into history, so like a lot of the psilocybin history is associated with paganism.
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons why the church went on the campaign. I actually think the Scottish government are about to apologise. Have you heard this?
No, I've not heard of it. No.
There's I can't remember what it was, between sort of 1400 and 1700. About 2,600 witches were killed, executed in Scotland for being a part of the pagan
Absolutely
faith.
mental.
But that would have been the association of, you know, living out in the forest and understanding how to live off the land and what's medicinal, and then not needing to go to church to be in contact with God.
Yeah.
Like, that's the big thing. It's a control mechanism, right? So like if you can go into the forest and pick some mushrooms and eat them, and you don't need to go and speak to the vicar and confess your sins or whatever, then there's no control in that environment.
No,
the church doesn't have control. They can't get that bit of cash out of you. Same thing with the government. They don't want you thinking freely, which is why you can buy cigarettes and alcohol, but you can't go into the forest and pick mushrooms.
They keep you shackled, you know what I mean? Because it's mad, because mushrooms are classed as a Class A drug. So they grow freely in my back garden. They grow freely everywhere. But the moment you pick that up, you're in possession of a Class A drug. And I think that's fucking ridiculous, because I don't think I've ever heard of anybody dying of it. And like when you look into the benefits of microdosing and stuff like that, because I microdosed for almost 2 years, and it was during the entire lockdown basically. I just microdosed, and I'm telling you, my mind, like I was able to take in information a lot better. Like I taught myself how to trade currencies and stuff like that, and to an extremely high level. And it honestly, it switched my brain on. Like I never felt high, because I've never actually done a mushroom trip or anything like that. But like just the benefits of that alone, and when you look at the sort of like science that's been put into it, they're saying that it can repair and regrow damaged brain receptors and stuff like that. But the problem with it, it's fucking free.
There you go. It's the same situation that we're in at the moment with the vaccine and like why are no governments pushing vitamin D and zinc and vitamin K? Because that's really what the issue is. Like people that are going into hospital and really suffering with COVID is because they've got vitamin D deficiencies. It's because their immune system's compromised.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's no money to be made there, because vitamin D can be manufactured for nothing.
Exactly. And if you take into consideration, like talking about stuff like that, like this whole body positive movement, you've now got obesity, which kills 2.5 million people each year, being glamorized. You know what I mean? You cannot be fat and healthy. Like, you just can't. Like, you might feel good, but the visceral fat around your organs and stuff like that, it's unhealthy. And it's almost like we're in a society that's just glamorizing unhealthiness because it makes money. I mean, if you've got 2,500 people dying each year, then you need to take into consideration how many people have got complications from being obese that are fucking raking in money. And it's absolutely mental, but we'll never be in a society where we'll look at sort of like natural remedies for anything.
Not in our lifetime, I don't think.
No.
Not in our lifetime. I mean, I hope so, but I think if we do go in that direction, then there's enough money to start shutting those movements down. I mean, you look at the amount of resistance that legalization of cannabis had in the US, and that all came from the paper industry shutting down the trade of hemp.
Because that's what they used to use back in the old days. It's sort of like weed and stuff like that single-handedly destroyed the cotton industry, didn't it? Because it grows faster. It grows so much faster. There's so many more applications, medicine, textiles, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they don't want it.
No. It's sustainable. It's cheap. It's, you know, you can use it for a multitude of things. If you owned land during the Second World War and you weren't growing hemp to support the war effort, then you were considered to be a traitor.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You used to be able to pay your taxes with hemp during the Second World War.
Wow.
Yeah, it's mad. And, you know, you think, you know, the Declaration of Independence is printed on hemp paper. Like, it's a campaign. It's the same. I mean, it all comes back to the same thing. You just follow the money, don't you? Same thing with Nikola Tesla and all of the inventions that he was working on, funded by J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
And he owned the copper industry, so he didn't want electricity to not need copper wiring.
Yeah.
Which is why Nikola Tesla was shut down. You know, the amount of people. Same with Ford. Like, Ford bought an engine that could get a 1976 Chrysler 150 miles to the gallon.
Whoa.
And Ford bought the technology and buried it.
That's mental. Because I remember hearing a story, and it was about a guy that made a engine that ran like on water, and they ended up going missing. Like,
Right.
the world's so corrupt, but I also think that it feels like technology is making us regress as a species. Because if you look at everything we do, like everyone's getting a hard on for these electric cars and stuff like that. But like the cells in these batteries are they're causing so much damage to the environment. Like, what are you going to do with these batteries when they run out of life after 10 years? They're going to need replaced. What are you going to do once they've run out?
Yeah.
And it almost feels like we've regressed as a society, because when you look back at sort of like ancient Egypt and stuff like that, everything's like, when you look at the technology and stuff like that, like, or the proof of the technology they've got, everything just looked so much more sustainable. Like, they lived with the environment. We're making the environment live with us.
That's it.
And it's almost like, is it too far gone now?
Yeah. Do you feel like you're a bit further out of it being up here? Like, in the cities, is it more prevalent, do you think? Like, do you go into cities and think to yourself, okay, this is why I don't live in a city?
Well, I feel when I go into cities, like when I go into Edinburgh, for example, I feel like I'm dealing with a different breed of human. It's almost like this city mindset, being surrounded by all this shit, kind of dumbs them down.
It's toxic, isn't it?
Yeah, because when I go into a city environment and I'm walking down the street and stuff like that, nobody moves out of each other's way, nobody's living in harmony. It's just boom, 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 shoulder barge, shoulder barge, shoulder barge. And I'm like walking through it and I'm like, right, fuck it, I'm getting erect right now. I'm going through like that, you know what I mean? Just trying to smash people out the way. But it's almost as if everyone's just all for themselves these days.
Yeah.
And that's more apparent in cities. But I just can't see any growth with that.
Yeah, I don't know what the revolution's going to be, but I feel like there's going to be one. You know, there's going to have to be a revolution to change this path that we're on right now.
Oh, mate.
And I mean, I think the whole COVID thing is going to help, because, you know, a lot more people are now more conscious of their health. I wish more governments were pushing for more people to be conscious of their health.
Yes.
But if you, like, Ecuador have just put out a fantastic advert on TV.
Right.
And it's just a general advert for everybody in the country. It'll be shown regularly on TV, and it's about being healthy, keeping your weight down, taking your vitamins, having a good diet. It's not about you need a vaccine, you need a booster, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Yeah.
It's promoting, positive changes in lifestyle, which is what we all need. And I think, if you clear your diet up, the first thing that starts to happen is your brain starts to function better.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Your brain functions better, then you start to be a bit more self-reflective. You have more capacity. If your computer's clogged, you're not going to get very good performance out of it, right? If you can unclog your system, you're going to get a better performance out of your system. And you don't know what you're going to start unlocking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, like just adding a microdose of mushrooms. And what difference did that make? It's amazing.
Changed my mind completely. Unbelievable. And I just wish that there wasn't so much stigma with it and people would actually start doing it, because I swear if everyone done it, we'd have a lot more original thinkers, we'd have a lot less miserable bastards.
A lot less depression.
A lot less. Well, that's another thing that goes into it. I remember years ago, so I went through every two weeks of every year, I'll struggle to sleep. I don't know why, it's bizarre. And I remember going to the doctors for it, and I was like, listen, if I'm struggling to sleep, I'm like, what can you do about it? And I was like, can you give me sleeping tablets? Just something to knock me out, because I'm getting pissed off. And then he was like, he's like, we don't really give out sleeping tablets for sleeping problems. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what the fuck are you? Like, I'm like, this is stupid, right? And then he's like, what I can do though, is I can give you these antidepressants. He's like, because I've got a mild sedative in them. And I was like, no. I'm like, are you having a laugh? Like, and I literally, first time in my life I've ever been thrown out of GP before, right? I kicked off, I was like, you're having a fucking laugh. You want to give me antidepressants because I can't sleep? That's going to destroy the levels in my brain and almost irreparable, because I've seen like with first hand what antidepressants do to a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, there's obviously going to be some people out there that benefit from it, but my experience with it is not good. Like, I don't speak to my mum because it's almost as if she's got no consciousness anymore. She's just completely, she's gone in the brain, and it's this reliance on antidepressants. Yeah. And I'm almost wondering if they're giving them out like Smarties, because that's what they fucking want everyone to be like.
Yeah. There's an incentive, a financial incentive to be pushing these things, especially, not as much in the UK, but certainly in other places in the world. Yeah. Like, there's a financial incentive to be prescribing these things to people, and we talked a little bit about steroids, performance enhancing drugs. Yeah. As you know, if you start injecting testosterone, your body doesn't need to keep producing it, so it stops, right? If you're swallowing serotonin on a regular basis, your body doesn't need to figure out how to produce it. You don't do things that will produce positive hormones, like exercise and good diet and getting out in the sunshine, And then antidepressants don't solve the problem, they maintain it.
And obviously I don't have much experience with antidepressants, but you don't really hear much about people when people come off it, because, like, for example, I've done anabolic steroids numerous times over my life, but when you come off, you take something to sort of kickstart your natural production. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure they don't give you anything to kickstart your natural production up here either.
What would they do though? They just give you more antidepressants, wouldn't they?
Exactly.
You've got to fill that gap with something, similar, which is why people go through that long detox process of getting them out their system and having to help regulate their sleep and their diet and exercise better. But again, we go back to mushrooms. If you could give somebody one or two really powerful experiences,
or change their life.
The microdosing of consistent small adaptations in their brain chemistry. And
these hallucinogenics and stuff like that, they're not addictive. Mm-mm. You know what I mean? Because when I was microdosing, I never went, I better get another one down me. No. It was just, that's fine. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was so natural. It didn't mess with our natural levels or anything like that, and I felt fucking quality. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's something that I've always said I'll do for the rest of my life, is microdose. Because even if it prevents some sort of like degenerative brain condition down the line, then I will use it as a preventative measure. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine how much different the world would be. Now you've had that experience of microdosing, imagine how much different the UK would be if they were just available. Oh. If you could go into shops and buy the little predetermined sachets for each day. Yeah.
Well, just imagine how good the world would be if medicine didn't involve money. Right. Like, it would be fueled by a totally different thing then, but it's money corrupts absolutely everything. And it's going to be money that is the ruin of just life as it is, like this number that you can just print it out. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're doing it now,
That's it.
and it's just people. It's just the average Joe that suffers because of it, and. Nah, it's just, I don't know, you can feel it in the air, I don't know about you, but I can feel it in the air, and I almost feel like there's an energy in the air, like a tension, and we're just waiting for that catalyst to sort of like bring it on.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, I thought it might be the state of politics in the US that would trigger it around the world.
Yeah, well,
I thought that the mandates and the lockdowns would do it, but you know, I think Omicron's saving us. To be honest, it looks like it's going to bring an end to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But there is that tension, and there's protests going on around the world that we're not even really hearing about because the media's shutting it down.
And it's mental that, but they see it as, we don't want it to influence other people to go out and do it. But media is so corrupt, man. Like, my wife's mum and I, we've had disagreements with her because we were talking about protests and stuff like that. She's like, "You're talking bollocks. They didn't happen. I've not seen it on the news." And it's, you know, I mean, it's almost as if the way the world is now is to get everyone fighting with each other. I mean, they've brought back, there's so much racial turmoil right now. There's so much animosity between the right and the left. And if there's racial wars, the right are fighting the left, we're not really going to be focusing on the problems at hand.
No, you divide a population to control it, you know.
Exactly.
That's it's been used by every major empire all the way throughout history. You know, it's people have got to stay together, and it's like media and government thrive off the division, you know, and this is the part that we've got to fight. But then the more dumbed down the population is, the less they're going to think for themselves, the less they're going to see these things going on.
But I think that, see, the microdose kind of opened my mind to some degree, because I remember being down during the first lockdown, and I was driving along. I was like, McDonald's is open, but my gym's shut.
Crazy.
I was like, what the fuck is going on here? I'm like, it's almost as if they're ushering in control under the guise of a pandemic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just, I came out of it all just with so many questions and just completely different outlook on life. But I also feel like it's been a good experience for me, because I had a lot of time during lockdown to just spend with my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Did you struggle looking at the outside world though? Because that's one problem I had throughout the pandemic. I mean, we were just talking about it earlier, Veronica and I, and we had, like, the first few months were great because no one was coming around. We couldn't go anywhere. We were just hanging out, building Lego and watching movies, and you know, really having a good time. But then in the back of your mind, you've got this phenomenon going on in the world where people are being locked in their houses and not allowed to leave, and you kind of think to yourself, this is either going to go really well and everyone's going to break out, or it's going to go really badly and we're just going to find ourselves with a new precedent set. Yeah. Like look at Austria at the moment. Yeah. If you're not vaccinated, you're locked down. That's a terrifying state to be in.
Australia, if you don't get vaccinated, you're getting a $10,000 fine, and your place of work, if they're allowing you to work, they get a $100,000 fine.
Is that right?
And
that's crazy. Have you heard about what's going on with Novak Djokovic?
Yeah. Like,
I mean, he was.
Fuck, man.
I don't know. He got there, had his visa revoked, and then they gave it back to him, and now they've revoked it again. I do like the fact that his name's Novak, though.
Yeah. Couldn't get any more perfect. He was like built for it.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, and even the perspective of like the purpose of the vaccine is being twisted as well. Like, you're irresponsible if you're not having it because you're not.
What I find bizarre is when you see fucking 10-ton Tessie that's double jabbed up the wazoo, she's seen as less of a health hazard than me.
Yeah.
That goes to the gym 4 times a week. And I'm like, the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
I'm like, the world is absolutely mental, but I do feel like people in general have completely changed during all of this. Like, nobody seems to be as motivated anymore. Nobody, it's almost as if they didn't have really any inhibitions anymore, you know, like, because I used to have a studio in Edinburgh, and I remember it was doing really well, and obviously that didn't earn anything for about 6 months, and I went back, and nobody was fucking working. I was like, what the hell's happened? I was like, the income for the shop's more than halved. I was like, this has changed how, like, people's minds, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's bizarre, but hopefully we come out of it properly soon. I think we
so.
will.
I think so. And I think a lot of people have had those, have had revelations that they don't want to be spending 8 hours a day in an office when they can actually be working from home and be more productive.
I do think it has been beneficial for a lot of people as well, because they didn't really feel slaves to the system anymore.
Yeah.
And
Did it make you thankful for being self-sufficient in your career?
well, to a degree, but obviously I wasn't allowed to work during lockdown.
Right.
You know what I mean? Tattooing wasn't seen as essential, and it fucking is. Like,
It is.
People
Therapeutic.
People need art to get by.
That's it. I need this more than a Big Mac, that's for sure.
I didn't tattoo for almost a year during it all.
That must have been weird.
To be fair, it was actually a blessing in disguise, because I learned a completely different trait. Like, when you put me in a position where you're taking my earning potential away from me, I'm going to try and put myself in a position where I can adapt. You know what I mean? Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Yeah.
And I actually took a really long break from tattooing, but it was so needed. You know, my brain was absolutely fried from it, because I'm not really much of a people person. It's not like I hate people, but it was just, I felt like I just needed a break from it from work, because when you're working as intensely with people as what I do, people tell me their life stories, which is great. I've got absolutely no problem with it, but when you're hearing like these stories over and over again, it actually kind of gets to you sometimes. Not in a bad way, it kind of, that energy kind of brushes off in your mind.
Yeah. And a lot of creative people as well, they find themselves, they take on other people's stuff a lot.
Sensitive to it a lot more.
You can put yourself in other people's situations and feel their pain. And I mean, you know, you're a therapist as well as a tattoo artist, aren't you? You know, you're hearing difficult stories and...
Yeah, I remember there was a funny story. So I used to love a Facebook rant, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, getting unfriended by about 15, 20 people every day, right? And then I put up one day, I was in such a bad mood, and I said, listen, I was like, if you're getting tattooed by me, I was like, I don't need to hear your sob stories. I was like, you got to remember that I take this in. I was like, basically just had a wee rant, and then I was like, I'm not a psychologist. And then this woman commented on it and said, well, I believe a good tattooist can be a good psychologist. And I was like, listen, you stupid cow. I was like, that means a good tattooist can be a good psychologist, you know? And then...
It's not a transferable skill set.
A good psychologist could be a good tattooist, sorry.
Yeah.
And then she was like, unfriend.
Yeah. Yeah. People don't like conversation anymore these days, don't they? They don't like debate. They don't like having someone that disagrees with their point of view.
No, absolutely. We're in a weird sort of like, I always say we're in a weird kind of place in the world now, because we're separated by the right and the left, and you've got the right that can fight but won't fight, and you've got the left that can't fight but will fight.
Yeah.
And it just seems like everything's just so wrong now.
Yeah. Everything's flipped on its head a little bit.
Oh, definitely. But before we finish up, have you got any sort of like goals or any plans for full Reptile or anything now coming up? Any projects?
We're building out the channel. We've got a couple of other things that we're adding to the channel. I'm going to be doing like a weekly rankings update and you know, going over new matchups that have been made, because I did a preview for 2022 at the start of the year. We posted, and it just went down really well. Brilliant. So I'm going to start adding that in on a weekly. We've got a new gym opening as well in the Midlands. Yeah. So we've got Hardy Warled it's a cool space, but it's quite a small space, and we have a team of about 30 fighters, and when they're all on the mat together, it's rammed. And if we have guests come in, there's no space. Yeah. So we're looking at opening a second place, which is going to have a lot more mat space. I mean, the demand for MMA training is crazy since the pandemic. So the good thing is everybody wants to be in gyms and well, everyone wants physical contact. I think that's a big part of it.
No, definitely.
So we're working on that at the moment. That'll be open hopefully April.
Right.
Aside from that, though, I'm just trying to find my little niche in life. You know? Like something it's been a topic of conversation and something that's been on my mind for the last few months, especially with people going into lockdowns and finding new careers in the process, and like you said, retraining and learning new skills. People find that little niche in life where they found a comfortable rhythm where they don't want for anything more than they've got. Now, one of my favorite shows to watch in the evening when I'm relaxing is Repair Shop. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, no.
It's like a barn with a bunch of people who are specialists at repairing old clocks and old leather, and like really, really interesting people, but very, very specialist.
Right.
Like there's a guy that repairs fountain pens, and there's a guy that repairs accordions.
Yeah.
And it's such a specific job, but every single one of these people, they're so content in what they're doing, and they're not rich, and they're not living lavishly, but they've found that little niche in life that suits them. It gives them everything they want out of life, and they don't want for anything more. And I think I've always, even as a kid, I was always chasing for something more. It's like, okay, well, now what next? What next? What do I need now? And I'm getting a bit old now, but I'm kind of settling a little bit into what's important, what's essential. One of my favourite books is Walden by Henry David Thoreau, and he talks about, the whole book is about moving out to Walden Pond and building his own house and kind of living off the grid. But this was in the late 1800s.
Oh, shit.
Late 1900s it would have been. And his whole book was about finding the grossest of groceries, as he put it, the absolute necessaries in life, and how he could find peace from that. And as I've been touring around Scotland over these last few days, I've met loads and loads of people that have found that niche in life. They've found that they've got a little distillery up in the north where they're working on their whatever they're brewing. We call it into Outlaw rum, and they've just got a fantastic setup. But talking to those guys, they've found their niche. They've found their place in the world where they're content and they're happy. And I think that's what's most important.
Oh, 100%. It's always a different kind of energy you get from someone that is just, this is it. I make enough to live on, and I live very comfortably. That's all I need.
That's it.
No, definitely. But listen, bro, thank you very much for coming on the show, man. This has been awesome.
No worries, man. And this has been a very gentle process as well.
It's been
no
bad.
Light touch,
No bad. Well, now the pain starts, the camera switches off, so we'll see if I can tap you out. If I tap you out, does that make me harder than George
for
St.
sure.
Pierre?
It does absolutely, It does absolutely. It does absolutely.
Ideal. Nice one, bro.